Welcome to a Bestow TV production. If you enjoy our content, please click the subscribe button. To get notifications of new releases, ring that bell. Thank you, and away we go.
He is a legendary professional wrestler with almost 50 years in the wrestling business. He was immortalized as a G.I. Joe, a real American hero. He is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Please give a huge RetroCon welcome, Sergeant Slaughter! As all young boys want to be a football player, that's what I thought I wanted to be. And I was a pretty good football player in high school. So that was my goal, was to get into the NFL somehow, go through college. We had a pretty small high school, so they didn't give out a lot of scholarships. So my father said, well, if you want to maybe go to college, we could try that, but you might want to think of the Marine Corps, which he was in. So I was actually born in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is where Parris Island is. And my father was a Marine at Parris Island, so I followed his footsteps. I joined the Marines and had two tours of duty in Vietnam, and I ended up being a drill sergeant, and went to a drill sergeant's boot camp, which is even tougher than a regular boot camp. If anybody out there has been in a boot camp. And so I had a junior DI that was a big fan of mine for some reason. He liked to play football, and we watched a lot of football together. And one morning he came into the barracks and said, Sarge, I just saw a movie with Jackie Gleason, and can't remember who the other actor was, but Jackie Gleason's character was Sergeant Slaughter. So he said, you remind me of that character, so I'm going to start calling you Sergeant Slaughter. And I said, no, don't call me that here. So it was kind of a joke between he and I when we'd be out off the base. He would call me Sergeant Slaughter. So after I got, when I was on leave one day, I went to a pro wrestling training camp. I was invited by a friend of mine who was a wrestler, or a photographer, and he was going to do a story on a pro wrestling training camp. He was kind of a sports writer. So he asked me to go along, so I went there and I ended up getting into the ring, and they put holds on me and had me yell Uncle Sam quite a few times. And I noticed the wrestlers that were in the ring when I walked into the training camp were all guys that I wrestled when I was in high school, and I beat them all. And so I said, well, if they could be doing this, I should give this some thought. So one of the wrestlers was Ric Flair, who is Ric Flair of today, Jim Brunzell, Greg Gagne, the Iron Sheik, who was Cosmo Vasari at that time. There's about 10 of them. So they ended up having me get in the ring and put the holds on me. So I went to get out of the ring after they, what we call stretched. They stretched me, and the guy that was training the wrestlers, his name was Vern Gagne, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I don't see any reason to stay in here. You're taking advantage of me." He goes, "What do you mean we're taking advantage of you?" I said, "Well, I'm letting you put the holds on me." He says, "Oh yeah, is that right? You think you can do any better?" I said, "Probably better than what I'm doing." So he told me to get back into the ring and told me to get down to the wrestling position, which is on your hands and knees. And the first name he yelled out was Rick, which was Ric Flair. And I knew I could beat Rick like that because I did it in high school. So I heard Rick say to Vern Gagne, "I got a bad shoulder, coach. I don't know if I can do this." And he goes, "Don't give me that, get on it." So they said wrestle, and I escaped from Rick, and I ended up hitting him, which didn't go over so well. So then they put me against Ken Patera, who was in the Olympics and weightlifting champion, and I escaped from him. and they were getting a little bit upset with me, so they had the other professional wrestler by the name of Billy Robinson come into the ring, and he told me to get down on all fours, and when I did, he dropped his shin on the back of my ankle and tried to break my leg for me. So I came up, as the old expression is, blood, the beer. We were battling it pretty bad. So I got the best of him. I got him down, and I got him into a pinning position, which really made everybody mad. So they finally broke us apart and got me out of the ring, and Ric Flair took me out of the training camp area. And he said, "Where'd you learn how to fight like that?" I said, "Well, I was a high school wrestler." He goes, "Yeah. What high school did you go to?" And I said, "Eden Prairie High School." "Oh yeah, I live in Eden Prairie." I said, "Yeah, I know." And he said, "Where else did you learn how to fight?" I said, "Well, I'm in the Marine Corps." He goes, "I'm in the Marine Corps." I said, "Oh, that's great." So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to be a professional wrestler, when you get out of the Corps, hook me up." And I said, "Well, it might be sooner than you think." I said, "But the one thing I want to do now is go back and get that guy that tried to break my leg. I got a career here I'm trying to fulfill." So he said, "No, you'll have plenty to do with him later." So that's kind of how I got into the professional wrestling. Now, about a year later, I didn't re-enlist. I decided to go to be a professional wrestler. So I looked up Ric Flair, and he got me into training camp, and lo and behold, I got to get in the ring again with Billy Robinson. We run around a few more times, but that's basically how I got into professional wrestling in the ring, and how I got my nickname, Sergeant Slaughter, which I didn't use right away. I used my real name, and when that red light would come on that camera, it just made me very nervous. So I just couldn't play myself. So one day I was up in Vancouver, Canada, and it was my first night in the territory. And I walked into the dressing room, and I saw a gentleman sitting there by the name of Jack Briscoe. I don't know if anybody's heard of the name Jack Briscoe, but he was a very convincing amateur wrestler. Oklahoma State was the world heavyweight champion for the NWA, and was considered what we call a shooter, which is kind of what the nickname I got. So I walked up to him, and I said, I handed out my hand to shake his hand, and he said, before I could tell him what my name was, he said, "I'm Jack Briscoe, NWA World Champion." And I went to tell him my name, and he said, "I know who you are." And I said, "You know who I am?" And he goes, "Yeah, anybody that beat up Billy Robinson, I gotta know who they are." So he said, "Are you in town for a while?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here. I just started tonight." And he goes, "Well, I'm here for a week. Can I ride with you?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I said, "I got an old pickup truck." He said, "That's even better as long as you get some country music in it." So I went with Jack Briscoe for a week, and he kind of educated me to the world of professional wrestling. And I told him how nervous I was trying to be myself, and he said, "Well, why don't you think of a character? Maybe you can come up with a character." And I kept thinking about Slaughter, maybe I'd go with Bob Slaughter. So that made me a little bit easier in front of the cameras, but it just still wasn't it. But that's kind of how I got put into the wrestling world from the Marine Corps. In 1979, I started the wrestling business in 1973, 74. So I was wrestling outside of the WWF at that time. And so Ric Flair, the gentleman that trained me, had a problem with one of his masked wrestlers. His name was the Super Destroyer. And he said, "Would you think about putting a mask on and wrestling as a masked man?" I said, "Well, I'll give it a thought. I could do that." But right before that, I started Sergeant Slaughter down in Kansas City, Missouri. And that was in 1975, 76. So I went under a mask for about 3 years as a Super Destroyer Mark II. And I heard that there was a wrestler going to New York City, so I asked him if he would take my photos to show Vince McMahon Sr. My photos and show him my character. He said, yeah, I'll do that. And that was Sergeant Slaughter. So I got a call from Vince McMahon Sr. and he said, I got your photos. I'd like you to come in for a tryout. So I went in there to Allentown, Pennsylvania. Probably a lot of you maybe been to Pennsylvania, or Allentown, Pennsylvania, the old Ag Hall. We used to do wrestling matches there. So I was there basically all day, and finally Vince's father, Vince Sr., came to me, and he said, I want you to go out and do a promo with my son. I want to hear what you sound like on the microphone. I said, okay. So I got my outfit on, and Vince's father used to have kind of a nervous twitch, and he had 4 quarters. He'd always kind of dangle them in his hands. So you always knew when he was around because you could hear those quarters. So he said, I want you to go out and do a promo. Is there anything I can do to help you set it up? And I said, yeah. I went in my bag and I got a cassette tape. And I said, would you play that? And he goes, what is it? I said, it's a Marine Corps hymn. He said, you mean it's the song? And I said, yeah. He said, I never thought about having music, for an entrance. And I said, well, I just thought you kind of fun to try it. So he said, okay. So he left and he came back and he said, okay, I gave it to the guys in the truck, and when you're ready, we're gonna go. I said, okay. So they had Vince, my boss today, Vince McMahon, standing out there waiting for me to come out and do a promo. And so all of a sudden the music started playing, and everybody that was there for 4 or 5 hours watching all these matches kind of perked up a little bit. They had never heard music either. So as I went to walk out, Vince's father put his arm in front of my entrance, and he just had me stop, and he was listening to the reaction of the audience of music being played. And people were kind of like buzzing. So I came out, blew my whistle, and had my cigar in my mouth and my swagger stick, and I was dressed like I am right now. I had combat boots on and my fatigues. And by the time I got to Vince to do the promo, people were wanting to climb over the railing. I was calling them pukes and calling them maggots and slimed and scummed. I wanted to know why they weren't standing on their feet and give me a salute. And by the time I got to Vince, we almost had a riot. So first thing Vince went to say my name, and I said, shut your hole, puke, who gave you permission to speak? Some of you may have been there that night. It wasn't televised, it was just for an in-house. And it startled him, because he'd never met me before. It's the first time he'd laid eyes on me. First time I laid eyes on him. So he was startled, and he went to say something else, and I said, stand at attention, you maggot. And I took my swagger stick, and I went all over his body, and told him to stick his chest out, and put his stomach in. And I heard through the grapevine that he really worked out hard. His chest was sticking out, and but I heard through the grapevine that he used to get haircuts that cost $200. So I took my swagger stick as he was standing at attention. I was going through his hair, messing up his hair. He didn't like that too much. And so I got right to his face and I said, who cut your hair? Ray Charles? So he started getting a little bit more reddish. And so finally we got through the promo. As I went to leave, I didn't know this. I knew about the haircut, but I didn't know this. So I took a big swag of my cigar, and I blew the smoke in his face. And Vince McMahon, my boss, you don't come 100 yards from him and have a cigarette or any smoke at all. He doesn't allow it in his home, in his office. He just, no smoke. So now I turn around, look at him, he's turning purple. He really is not liking me now. So I get back to the dressing room, and all the other wrestlers are kind of like, he lost his job before he even got started. So I've taken off my combat boots and taking my other things off, and all of a sudden I hear those 4 quarters dingling in my ear. So Vince's father walks around my chair a couple times, and finally I stop unlacing my boots and I look up at him, and he's just staring at me. He stops jingling his quarters and he does that to me. Follow me. And we go into this little back room, and he just looks at me, walks around me a couple more times, and I wait for him to tell me to get the hell out of there. He's gonna fire me. He got right into my face and he said, "That's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life." He said, "Sergeant Slaughter, I gotta have you start right away. Because not only do the fans hate you, my son hates you." So that's how I got started in the WWE. I started using the Cobra Clutch. And nobody ever seen the Cobra Clutch before, so I put a $5,000 price tag if anybody could get out of the Cobra Clutch. So that was my first kind of rise to fame there. And several wrestlers, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, many of them tried it before they were big stars and couldn't get out of it. So one time Pat Patterson was doing the commentary, and he came over to interview me, and got to talking about the Cobra Clutch, and I said something to him, or I shoved him, and so he jumped in the ring and said, "Put the Cobra Clutch on me." And so I said, "No, that'd be too easy. So put the Cobra Clutch on." So we had this little confrontation, and he got to the ropes just as I was letting the go, so everybody thought he got out of it, but he really didn't. So we went around the territory, as we call it, in all kinds of matches. And the last match we had was a alley fight at Madison Square Garden. And as he was saying, it was hardcore before hardcore, and they say to this day it was the greatest match of all time in Madison Square Garden. And a lot of other wrestlers said it was the greatest match they ever saw. And they used to take the tape of that match and show it to training camps. I went over to Japan. They were showing it to the wrestlers over there, Germany, Australia. It was kind of a match where they try to show the wrestlers how to tell a story and take your time. And we had no referee. And as far as I know, it's the only match that's ever been sanctioned without a referee. And it's hard enough to have a match with a referee, much less without a referee. But we did it. If you ever get a chance to see it, you'll understand why. And my only problem was when I started to go walk out to the ring to have the match with Pat Patterson, my manager was the Grand Wizard, and I called him the General. So on the way out of the locker room, I turned to him and I said, "General." He goes, "Yes, Sergeant." I said, "How does this match end?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, there's no referee, there's no rules. What, do we kill each other, or how does this match end?" He said, "That's a good point." So we kept going in there, and Pat was already in the ring, and as I got into the ring, he started after me, and we started the match right as I got to the ring, and it's a classic. Well, I left the WWE right after the Pat Patterson type feud and with Bob Backlund, because he didn't stay very long in New York. You'd be there 8 months, 9 months, and then they'd send you off. So people didn't get too used to you. So I went down to the Carolinas and I worked there for a while. So I made my my return, and my second time there in the WWE. I hadn't even wrestled yet. I met Vince McMahon and his father and a couple other people that were working in the production end of it. And they're all, God, Sarge, it's great to have you back. There's no better villain in the world of professional wrestling. We're just glad to have you back. And we've got some great matches lined up with you and Backlund and some other wrestlers, Jimmy Snuka. And I said, well, if you think I'm such a good villain, you ought to see me as a hero. And Vince McMahon's father said, what do you mean, a hero? I said, well, you got the Iran situation, the Ayatollah Khomeini, you got the Black Hawks Down, you got the hostage situation, and all these things that happened to the United States, but we never really got to punch Ayatollah Khomeini right in the nose. You know, he kind of got away with it all after Carter and Reagan kind of did their thing. And so Vince's father's like looking at me kind of dumbfounded, and he goes, oh no, Sergeant, oh no, you could never be a hero. It sounds good, but you could never be a hero. And I looked over his shoulder, and his son, who my boss today, he's going, yeah, I like that. So he turns to his son, he said, no, you can't do that. He said, don't worry, Pops, we'll talk about it later. So I went to leave, and Vince ran up and grabbed me, and he said, I love that idea, I'll get back with you. And that was about the time Vince was taking over, Vince Jr. And God forbid he's here, he doesn't want to be called Junior. But Mr. McMahon ran up to me and he said, I'll give it some thought. So I started back in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and everybody, of course, was booing me and throwing stuff at me. We had the Gomer. And so the first hour I went out and I had my first comeback, and I had a young guy that I took pretty good care of. And the second hour, the Iron Sheik went out with Ayatollah Blassie. Freddie Blassie was his manager. And so the third hour, Vic runs up to me in the dressing room and he goes, you ready, Sarge? And I said, what? He goes, are you ready for what we talked about the other night in the bar? I said, you want me to go against the Iron Sheik? He goes, yeah. He said, I'm going to send him out to the ring and have him do a promo. I'm not going to tell him what's going on, or him or Blassie. I want it to be element of surprise. I want to see what happens. I said, okay. So right before he left, he goes, give me your best George Patton promo. You know, I want a real all-American promo. So I had about two minutes to think of what I was going to say. And back then, we didn't have scripts. We did everything, you know, off the top of our head. And we studied our characters and our opponents. And so the Iron Sheik was in the ring and took care of some young wrestler, Eddie Gilbert, I believe his name was. He was beating him up pretty bad. And so all of a sudden, Vince told the truck to play the Marine Corps hymn. So all of a sudden, the Marine Corps hymn started, and the place almost like you almost hear a pin drop. And as I came out of the curtain, the people were just kind of like a thunderous roar, slowly like, yeah, you know, and just made your hair stand on end. So I made my way up to the ring, and the Iron Sheik didn't know I was coming. Blassie didn't know I was coming. So I stepped in the ring, and he wanted to get out of the ring, and we kind of passed each other on the way. And I said, you want to fight somebody, Maggot? I'm the man you're going to fight. USA #1. People are going, yeah, USA. So I got in the ring, and I started doing a promo on him. I forget all what I said, but I basically declared war on the Iron Sheik in Iran. And at the end of it, I said, since I was a little boy in school, and when I went to the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and through the Marine, there was one thing we always said, we believed in, and I put my hand over my heart and I did the Pledge of Allegiance. And those people in that agricultural hall all stood up on their chairs and had their lighters going and were saying the Pledge of Allegiance with me. And afterwards I went, USA, USA. And they all started chanting, USA, USA. And the next week I came to TV, there were signs, the Gomers were crossed out and it was slaughter for president. And I got into the locker room and there's like 8 big sacks of mail. And I looked at them and one of the referees came over and said, Sarge, those are yours. And I said, what do you mean? Those are mine. He said, those are fan mail. You just got those today. So they had like 8 sacks of mail I had to go through. People were sending me utility caps and field caps and field jackets that their parents or their mother, dads wore, their grandfathers wore in the wars or in the military and wanted me to sign them. And it was crazy. It took me about a month to return all those. And I kept getting more and more and more. But that's basically how we got back into the WWE, and I challenged the Iron Sheik, and we ended up in a boot camp match at Madison Square Garden. It was very similar to the alley fight. There was no referee in the ring, but he was on the outside of the ring. And the only time he would come in is to count the shoulders or ask one of us if we wanted to give up. So that was another historical match that went on. And shortly after that, it was about 1984, we were doing promos for the new year. And Vince McMahon wanted me to start what we call the Cobra Corps. So I would say Cobra Corps in 84, Cobra Corps in 84. And the next thing I know, I get a call from a friend of mine who knew some people at Hasbro Toys, and they said they would like to talk to you about maybe being a member of G.I. Joe. And I went, really? So at that time, I had a camouflage limousine. And I put the flags on it and got my private. We got my attorney and we drove up to Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I told the driver, go around the block a couple times, let the people see the car. By the time I drove up to the front door of Pawtucket, Rhode Island's Hasbro headquarters, there was already a line of people wanting to get pictures, get autographs. And so I looked in the window and all these guys with suits on and everybody were looking out the windows, and they finally came out and it was like a mob scene. And I walked in with my entourage and acted like a pretty big shot. And we sat down and had a meeting and talked about how they wanted to take a real live character and put it into the animated show of G.I. Joe and be a spokesperson. That could go out to bases, go out to the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine bases, go to hospitals, go to veterans hospitals, go to children's hospitals, and go to toy stores and promote the product. So I said, well, I'm your man. And as I went to leave, I said, just remember, I'm the real live G.I. Joe. That's an animated G.I. Joe. I'm the real G.I. Joe. So we headed back, living in Connecticut at the time. And about halfway back, we stopped to have dinner. And my attorney called his office to get his messages. And Hasbro had called and already wanted me to come back and sign the contract. So I went about a week later and got everything signed and became the first living G.I. Joe. And got back to the WWE and saw Vince McMahon, and I was very happy that he was happy to see me. And I said, guess what, Vince, I'm going to promote WWE further than we've ever been pushed before. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm going to be in G.I. Joe. And I started telling him about my conversation and my everything with it. And he goes, yeah, that's great, but I can't let you do that. And I said, why not? And he goes, well, because I've got LJN and they're Hasbro, and it'd be a conflict of interest. So you can go be a G.I. Joe, but you can't work here. So he was kind of like saying, so that's it. So I gave it some thought, talked to my family, and I went to him about a week later, and I said, well, Vince, I made a decision. He was like, okay. And WrestleManias were just starting. First WrestleMania was just starting. And so I said, I decided I'm going to Hasbro. I'm going to be a G.I. Joe. And his face just like sunk. He said, Sarge, you can't go to Hasbro. I got you in the main event at WrestleMania. Really? I said, well, I can do the WrestleMania. He said, no, you can't. I can't have you in here in LJN. I said, well, Vince, I can always be a wrestler. Can't always be a G.I. Joe. So I went to shake his hand, and he begrudgingly shook my hand. He said, good luck with it. And we had a kind of a problem with it for a while. And but we finally ironed things out. Hacksaw Jim Duggan and I, when Hacksaw first came into the WWE, he was playing football up in Canada, was starving to death, and he came down. He was a pretty rugged guy, and he just went by Jim Duggan at that time. He didn't have the Hacksaw yet, and so he had a car, and the whole driver's side was crashed in. Somebody had run into him, and he had to get into the driver's side to drive the car. So I said, where are you staying? He goes, I'm just sleeping in my car. And I said, why don't you come? I got a place I share with a couple other wrestlers, and we just use it to sleep. And everybody chips in, and we have a couple of bedrooms there. He says, okay. So I said, you can sleep on the couch and help yourself to whatever you want to do. Bring your own groceries in, the refrigerator. So we started getting to be really good friends, and we started playing these, back before the video games were on television that you could play with, we had these little boxes that you play against each other. And we used to play this baseball game all the time, and I would always beat him. Every time I beat him. And it always was for $20, $20. So one day we were out going to a wrestling show, and we had Stan Valerian Hansen with us, and he's a pretty good, tough guy. So he was riding with us, and we got to the town early. So I said, what do you guys want to do? You want to go get something to eat? You want to go to a movie? And so Hacksaw didn't know what he wanted to do. So finally we're driving somewhere, and he goes, stop, Sarge, stop. Pull over there. Pull over to that place over there. And I said, where? He goes, a bowling alley. There's a bowling alley. I know something I can beat you at. I said, bowling? He goes, yeah. I said, geez, long time since I bowled. He said, well, that's good, because I'm going to get my $20 back. So I'm going to have to get up and demonstrate this. So we get into the bowling alley, and Stan Hansen said, I'm going to be the scorer, because I can't bowl. I said, okay, Stan. So Hacksaw went up and he threw the ball and got like a spare. Then it was my turn. I said, Hacksaw, can we have a practice game before we play for money? He goes, oh yeah, sure. So I went up and I threw the ball, and I went to the gutter. Almost every ball I threw went to the gutter. So Hacksaw's like. So finally, we got done with that first game. I had like a 17, and Hacksaw had 150. So he says, okay, Sarge, let's go. He puts his $20 down. I said, geez, that's like taking candy from a baby. He goes, put your money down. So I reached in and put my money down. And I said, who's going first? He said, I'll go first. He threw a ball, he got about 9 or whatever. So I went to throw the ball, and I walked back, and I looked at him, and I said, something's wrong. He goes, what's wrong? I said, I don't know, something's wrong. So I went to throw the ball again, and he said, what's wrong? And I went back, and I said, I don't really know. is the ball too big or too small? And I said, I've been thinking about it, and since I beat you so much in the football games and the baseball games, how about if we do $20 and $1 a pin? Whoever beats the other guy, figure out how much it is, and that's $1 for each point. He said, okay, you sure you want to do that? I said, yeah. He said, okay, we'll go. So I went to throw the ball again, and I stopped again, and I walked back, and he said, come on, Sarge, what's the problem? What's wrong? So I said, oh, I figured it out. He said, what is it? I said, I'm not left-handed. I'm right-handed. So he went, what? What? You're right-handed? I said, yeah. It's been a while since I bowled, but when I did bowl, I bowled about 4 nights a week. So he goes, really? And I looked back at Stan Hansen, and he fell over his chair. So I went up, and I had like a 195 or something like that. Hacksaw had 80. So he throws my money down, says to Stan Hansen, don't you tell anybody about this. And Stan says, no, I won't say anything. So we get to the car, Hacksaw's not even talking to me. We get to the arena, he walks in, Stan Hansen's right behind him, and I walk in behind Stan, and all of a sudden I hear Stan Hansen, hey everybody, you gotta hear what happened. Sergeant Slaughter pulled the biggest rib I've ever seen in my life. And that was my favorite rib. Yeah. Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect with a good ribber. And he used to have a thing that he got at a novelty store, and it smelled like rotten eggs. And it was a little bit of a bottle. And you take the top off it, and you throw it like that, a couple of shots, and about 10 seconds it smelled like rotten eggs. I mean, it almost gag you. So anytime we get on an airplane or something, and as you go through first class, he'd throw those drops down, and we looked up at all the first class passengers, and they'd be all, they're all going to the bathroom and heaving up their guts. I think one of the best ribbers, two best ribbers was Johnny Valentine. Johnny Valentine was one of the better guys that like to pull ribs. He and a guy by the name of Jay York used to play ribs on each other. We got a little bit overzealous. And one time, Jay York had asthma. And when he'd come back from the ring, he'd be out of breath, so he'd take his vaporizer or whatever they call it, and get his breath back. Well, he went to the ring one time, and Johnny Valentine took lighter fluid and poured it into his I don't know what they call him. So Jay York came back, and he went to get his breath back, and like that, just knocked him on his butt, and almost killed him. And he was like gagging. He knew who did it. So the next night, Jay York was a specialist in the Navy, and he knew how to weld. He could weld underwater, he could do anything. So Johnny Valentine had a car parked on the street, and Jay asked if he could be on early. So the promoter said, yeah, you'd be on early. So he goes and does his match, and he leaves. Well, Johnny Valentine was done. He was the last match. He gets in his car, opens up the trunk, puts his bag in the car, walks around, gets in his car, puts in a gear, and goes to drive, and the car's not going anywhere. The wheels are spinning. He couldn't figure out what was going on. Kept spinning the wheels. So he got out and he walked around, and here Jay York welded his bumpers to the parking meters. And they'd go back and forth all the time like that. And one night they had a big hard argument in the locker room. And finally Johnny Valentine said, "I've had enough of you, Jay York." He reached in his bag and he brought out a gun and he shot him. He went boom, boom, boom. Jay York grabbed his chest, fell over the locker room, was laying there and there's blood everywhere. And I wasn't there at the time, but Roddy Piper and a few of my other friends were there. And they said they were just like in shock. Couldn't believe it. They all ran out, and it was a joke on the wrestlers. He took some blood capsules and hit himself. They had blanks in the gun. So those are some of the bigger rivers that I remember.
Please give him a big round of applause.
Hey, never enough time. Never enough time. Thank you all. At ease, and you're dismissed.
Watch Creative Continuity, Cause Tunes, Con Rewind, Mr. Lobo Does, and more on this channel.